I'm wondering if we should say anything about the fact how we just completely forgot that the Hyrule Castle theme is a thing in Link to the Past.
Nope.
Or like we could. And like
we live and die by our... We live and die by our...
Put this at the beginning and then... be like, oh, hey, that's a theme that we just forgot existed.
Alternatively, Zelda's dead to me. I'm erasing all the Zelda games from the list and also modding my copy of Smash to remove all characters except for Zelda.
And then that's where Street Fighter music starts.
Welcome to Smashterpieces, a casual walk through the history of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate roster. My name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And if you're new to this show, what we're doing here is we are playing one game for every single character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, all the way from 1984's Duck Hunt to 2017's Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And today's game represents fighter number 60, Ryu. It is the 1991 arcade classic Street Fighter II and all of its million, billion, bajillion ports, versions.
Arcade, you say? That's not a Nintendo system.
Well, it would later come to... I mean, Street Fighter II has been on fucking everything. This is one of those games that has just been ported to everything because, in my opinion, this might be one of, if not the most historically significant games on our entire list. This game invented a genre, basically.
Well,
it didn't invent fighting games in general, but it invented what we know as fighting games.
I would say you're underselling Street Fighter 1 a little bit there, but
well,
yes.
Let me tell you some stuff about Street Fighter 1 real quick. So, first off, a lot of people helped us out with this episode because neither of us know anything about Street Fighter. We're woefully underprepared to talk about this game. Or at least were. I don't think we are as much as we were before because of the people that have helped us. First off, I'd like to thank friend of the show, Cyberlane420, who sent us a very interesting article on Polygon called An Oral History of Street Fighter II. It's really interesting, and boy, some shit went down when this game was being made. But also, I would like to thank Silent Scope 88,
an EVO Top 8 contender for Street Fighter 2 this year, who randomly showed up in our stream chat.
Basically, what we did was we played Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. Turbo Hyper Fighting, sorry. There's so many words. There's so many words in these titles. We played that on the SNES Classic together while Matt was here. And kind of realized that an hour of two idiots flailing around on a controller wasn't really enough to give us a lot of material to talk about Street Fighter 2, and also kind of just wasn't fair to Street Fighter 2 if that's all we went into this episode with. So what we did was, just last night as of recording, we sat down and we watched a VOD of the EVO Top 8 for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo in 2018, and like Matt just said, one of the players in that Top 8 randomly showed up in our chat and just talked to us.
While we were in the middle of his match, one of his matches.
Yeah, right in time for me to make a joke, a jab at his name, and for me to have the most egg on my face I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, just in time.
So, that was interesting. But, so, obviously this is a sequel. I say this invented the modern fighting game. This is obviously a sequel, but Street Fighter 1 is kind of unremarkable in that it was kind of a commercial failure. It had a bad reputation for a reason I didn't know about until I read this Street Fighter 2 article that was sent to us by Cyberlane420. So do you know how the original Street Fighter 1 arcade cabinet controlled? Because I didn't until today.
I do not.
Today, I learned that it is a joystick and 2 giant rubber buttons. And the harder you hit those buttons, the more damage your attack did. One is kick and one is punch.
Oh, so that's how Smash Brothers works.
And they had to recall them because people were hurting themselves on the arcade cabinets.
That is legit kind of how Ryu works in Smash Brothers.
That is so amazing. How have I never heard about that until now? And then Ben, I told that to Ben. Ben found a picture of the arcade cabinet. It looks so stupid. The buttons are like upside down paper bowls. And they're really dumb looking. Oh, I love it. I love it. But the game, I had the idea, I have been saying all this time that Street Fighter 1 was where combos were accidentally invented. That is apparently not true.
What? I thought it was Street Fighter 1.
It was Street Fighter 2. They were accidentally invented in Street Fighter 2 because in Street Fighter 1, performing like a Shoryuken or something like that was really luck-based and really, really hard. And the director of 2 was like, well, what if it wasn't like that, though?
How did Street Fighter 2 even get greenlit at this point?
Well, there's something else for you. The guy that directed Street Fighter 2 might have been an actual crazy person that probably, I'll be surprised if he's still working on games. Basically, he got fired from Konami because they told him to make a driving game, and then he made a shooter game instead. And so they fired him. And then he went to Capcom, and they told him to make Street Fighter 2. But he didn't want to make Street Fighter 2. He had gone to America and seen how well Double Dragon was doing, and was like, we're going to make a beat 'em up. And they made Final Fight. But it wasn't originally called Final Fight. They saw the game and they were like, fine, you can release this, but it has to be called Street Fighter. And he said, all right, we'll call it Street Fighter 89. But then realized when they took it to conventions that the Street Fighter name had a really bad reputation right now because people were fucking hurting themselves on the goddamn arcade cabinets to play it. And so they renamed it Final Fight. And then they said, man, Final Fight did really well. Make Final Fight 2. And he said, nah, I'm going to make Street Fighter 2 now. And then he just did.
Wait, why?
Because he didn't want to make Final Fight 2.
Why was he allowed to?
I have no earthly idea. The whole story was like, they told him to make this game, and then he didn't. He made a different game. But that game did really well, so they forgave him. And so on and so forth. And that's kind of how Street Fighter 2 came into being, is that this guy was told to make a sequel to Final Fight, and said, no, I'm going to make a sequel to Street Fighter instead. I'm going to make the game that you told me to make in the first place, because now I want to make it. And so they did. They made Street Fighter 2, and so part of it was, what if we made moves a little bit easier to do? What if this would be where, like, the quarter circle would come from and stuff like that, where I think those are a little hard to do, but that's just because I'm a scrub. They're
That's because you don't use the D-pad.
That too. But that's where that kind of thing came from. And they also introduced like supers and decided, what if we gave like a little bit of leeway for when you can put in your supers? And this accidentally led to people discovering, oh, if I hit the button during this frame of animation, I'll start the next attack, and I can chain attacks that way. And they accidentally made combos in Street Fighter 2. I always thought it was Street Fighter 1. Always. That is super fascinating.
Well, damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this guy, he was told to make Street Fighter 2, and they realized, wait, Street Fighter 2 would do terribly. So they made Final Fight, and then they said,
it wasn't so much that he thought Street Fighter 2 would do terribly, it was he didn't want to make Street Fighter 2.
Because it would do terribly.
No, that's why they renamed it, because they figured it would do terribly then, but originally it was just, I don't want to.
So then he did.
So then he did.
And then after it was a success, they were like, do more Final Fight. Then he felt like making it. Okay.
Yeah. And there's like stories about how the dude would prank everybody around the office. Like he'd send people emails that are like, hey, here's some video game ideas I have. Could you take a look at them and tell me what you think? And it'd just be porn. He sent them porn.
By any chance, was this man Jared Leto?
Surprisingly, no. And I had never heard of this man before, and that leads me to think that maybe he doesn't work in the video game industry anymore, because I don't know if he'd really survive. His name was Yoshiki Okamoto. He might still work for Capcom. I don't know. But he's the one that basically pulled together the team that made Street Fighter 2. And people will say that, like, while he was a fucking weirdo and possibly a super crazy person, it kind of reminds me of other sort of Japanese developers that are a little bit like this, because a lot of the really prolific Japanese developers seem to be like this, which is they don't act like you'd think a Japanese businessman or developer would work. They don't act like that. Like your Kojimas, your Miyamotos. Miyamoto is very low on that list, by the way. He's normal when you look at him. or like your Kamiyas, those kinds of people. He seems to be very similar to Hideki Kamiya, and I don't think it was any accident that they used to work for the same company.
Well, it sounds like he just had the misfortune of working in the industry in a time before the internet, when the cult of personality could become popular online.
And like I said, I've never heard of this man, so I don't know if he's still working for Capcom. I doubt he is, because he's not in charge of Street Fighter anymore, because Ono is currently in charge of Street Fighter. Or was. I think he got recently moved off. I don't remember. But, like, there's some crazy-ass shit. And especially when it comes to designing some of the characters, because this game introduced some of the most iconic fighting game characters of all time.
Yep.
Like, obviously, Street Fighter 1 introduced Ryu, Ken, and Sagat. I don't know if any other characters came out of Street Fighter 1.
It introduced Ryu and Red Ryu.
Red and Blonde Ryu. That eventually was named Ken. Ryu, an alternate color for Ryu that got his own name later. But Street Fighter 2 introduced Chun-Li and Guile and M. Bison, who, boy, we'll get to that in a second. And all sorts of characters, and later would introduce Cammy, who is also up there as one of the bigger, like, fighting game characters there is. And Dhalsim and Blanca. Zangief ended up in a Disney movie. Like, with a speaking role in a Disney movie.
I am really sad that we are not experienced enough in this game to give real insight to it. Because it is incredible, the legacy that this game has had. It is unlike any other game that I can think of, how fundamentally it created its own genre.
And, like, you can see there's a clear line from Street Fighter 2 to just about every fighting game there is. You've got stuff that was very much in line with Street Fighter, like pretty much all of SNK's library, like King of Fighters and Fatal Fury and all that kind of stuff. And you've got, over in America, this game would lead to a huge rivalry with Mortal Kombat, which was its biggest rival in the West by far. There were millions of, like, countless of Street Fighter 2 clones that weren't as good as Street Fighter 2. They even took one to court made by Data East called, I think, Fighter's Memories or something like that. Fighter's Memory or something, where they were accused of actually straight up tracing sprites from Street Fighter 2. And then you can see, like, a very clear line to the 3D fighters that would later follow, like Virtua Fighter or Soul Calibur or Tekken. And there's even an actual, for real, majorly clear line between Street Fighter 2 and Smash, because Street Fighter 2 is the reason Smash plays the way it does.
For better or worse.
Yeah, well, like, the central reason Smash plays the way it does is because Sakurai really liked Street Fighter 2, but he didn't like how, like, arcade cabinets would just be... They would always be held down by the best players. Those were the only people that seemingly got to play because nobody else could beat them because the skill ceiling of Street Fighter 2 was so high, and he wanted to make a fighting game that had a lower skill ceiling that anybody could play.
Well, if we want to get technical, that's more because of King of Fighters. King of Fighters 95, specifically. You could learn more about that in my video, Know Your Developers, Masahiro Sakurai for Nintendo World Report TV.
But, like, Street Fighter 2 has a massive legacy that followed it, and just... I really do think it is one of the more historically significant games, if not the most historically significant game on the entire list of games we have or will play for this show.
It is, yeah. No doubt. It is incredible. Just what kind of legacy this game has. A larger legacy than I feel like any game could have. Like, it not only, like, it is obviously not the first game to create a genre, but it might be the first game to so fully create a genre. Like, it wasn't the first of many stepping stones. It was a huge leap into fighting games.
It created combos. It created supers. It created the idea of a, like, versus fighting game. There wasn't one before this.
Yeah, and I don't know if any game can say that it did anything nearly as extravagant.
The closest we could possibly have, and it's not on this list, but I mean it's connected tangentially to games on the list, would be the original Legend of Zelda with a save function, and that's the closest I can think of, and that's like so far below the amount of shit that this game invented that it's insane.
Yeah, it's not comparable.
So this it's just such an interesting game historically, and I really do recommend people go and read that article. Another fun thing was all the characters were kind of designed and programmed by different parties, and then balanced by a couple other people, obviously, because there was this culture around the studio, apparently, that, like, people cannot be trusted to balance their own character. They all want their own character to be the best. There was even a point where Capcom started doubting that one member of the Western team could balance the game without inserting his own personal biases because he was a huge fan of Zangief. So,
no.
My favorite story comes from Yoko Shimomura, who we will talk about in more detail when we get to the music. She made the music of this game. Fantastic soundtrack, fantastic composer. But she told a story about how when she first saw Chun-Li, she asked the guy who designed Chun-Li, why are her thighs so big? Why does she look like this?
Oh,
and
no.
The dude went on what sounds like was a super creepy rant about how big thighs are so attractive and so, like, hot, and just basically explaining his fetishes to Yoko Shimomura, who, by the way, is a female. And people would have gotten sued on this nowadays for stuff like that. But and I mean that's nothing new. We always knew that something like that was involved with Chun-Li's creation. But she, like, tells the story of, like, yeah, it was really awkward, and you'd think that maybe somebody wouldn't tell somebody else that stuff, but it sure didn't stop him.
Did she, like, tell the story herself?
Yeah, she was one. So basically this article went and tracked down a bunch of people who worked on Street Fighter 2 in various ways, and Yoko Shimomura is one of them. And so is Yoshiki Okamoto, by the way. It is a super interesting article. I highly recommend reading it.
This game barely sounds real.
It sure does. It sounds like it's a miracle that this game was made, and to think it had such a massive impact on the industry and an entire genre of video games is insane.
It ended up as good as it did, somehow, despite everything.
And obviously, like we've said before, there are a billion different versions of Street Fighter 2. I feel like it's important. You are going to be mad at me for what I'm about to do.
Oh, no.
But here we go. You've got Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior, which was on the arcade, the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Atari ST, the Commodore Amiga, and DOS. That's weird. I didn't know about literally any of those except for arcade. It was on DOS. Of course it was on DOS. Who the fuck am I kidding? Everything was on DOS. It also came out on... There was Street Fighter 2 on Game Boy, even though it was technically It was a remake of Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior. You've got Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, which there is an entire section of that article about how originally Capcom did not want to make it because they figured nobody actually wants to play as the boss. Why would anybody want to play as the boss? That's the bosses. That's stupid. Why would anybody want that? And they had to convince them that no, this is a good idea. Let us change up some of the characters. Let us put the bosses in as playable characters. This is a good idea. People will like this. And it was a very Western-centric move because the fighting game community, the FGC around this game, started here, not in Japan. In Japan, Street Fighter 2 was seen more as an action game, and people rarely played against each other. Meanwhile, here, fucking rabid shit. They talked about making $14,000 or $1,400 a week on just 2 cabinets, which was insane for an arcade game back then. You've got Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, which obviously that's the version we played. It came out on the SNES. This also came out on a bunch of other stuff. You got Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers. You got Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Super Street Fighter 2 X Grandmaster Challenge, which I assume was the Japanese name, because that was the name that was on the game, the Evo video that we watched. So I'm assuming that's just the Japanese name, but I don't know. You got Hyper Street Fighter 2, the Anniversary Edition. You've got Ultra Street Fighter 2, the Final Challengers, which came out recently. 2 years ago on the Switch. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but the Street Fighter 2 section of this article is the biggest part of this article by far. In the Wikipedia article for list of Street Fighter video games. This game has been ported to so many places, has so many versions. It's crazy. And it was all a product of, well, we didn't really have patches or DLC back then.
That's true. That is a big part of it. They wanted to continue support for this game, and the only way to do that was to just make another.
Yep, pretty much. And they would add different characters the version we played did not have Cammy, it did not have DJ, it did not have Fei Long, and I think we were missing one other, T-Hawk. We were missing T-Hawk. So we didn't get to play as those characters, but obviously we got to see them in a tournament. Just, man, it's a wild ride.
That was the hypest shit, that tournament.
That tournament was super hype.
Did you guys know that Street Fighter 2 is pretty cool?
I mean, I assume if they're listening to this, they probably know, but they might not. It's so cool to watch.
It was one of the coolest Evo games I have ever seen.
And it started out really slow for us. We were kind of worried because the first match was a Ryu versus a Sagat, which was a lot of fireballs hitting fireballs.
Mm-hmm.
But then
and we expected that to kind of be the whole meta too.
Yeah, but then it got into there was a guy playing boxer. We should get into that. We should get into that real quick. So I learned why they didn't just rename one of the characters. Now the story goes that there are 3 characters in Street Fighter 2. One is a boxer, one is a dictator, and one is a man with a mask and a claw. In Japan, the boxer's name is M. Bison, the dictator's name is Vega, and the man with the claw's name is Balrog. But when it came over to America, they kind of realized, I don't think having a boxer named M. Bison is going to fly in America. we are going to get sued by Mike Tyson so hard. Because the dude was obviously supposed to be named after Mike Tyson, and in fact, he's kind of seemingly modeled after Mike Tyson in the first place, too. So they decided we have to change that name. Problem. All of the name graphics were already done and in the game.
Whoops.
So all they could do was switch names with characters. And then they also had the problem, I guess the localization director decided Vega does not look like it fits this dictator character at all. Don't know why he thought this. It seems fine to me, but a lot of sources claim it was because he thought it was too sissy-seeming a name. So what they wanted to do was
That's always a healthy way to feel about video games.
Sure is. So what they ended up doing was Boxer became Balrog. Dictator became M. Bison. Claw became Vega. That didn't change in Japan. That still hasn't changed here.
And now, so many years later, just like Capcom's other franchise of Ace Attorney, they're too deep in to change it now.
Yeah, it's impossible to change now. So the competitive community, because it is an international thing, refers to them specifically as Boxer, Claw, and Dictator. Because it's confusing otherwise. And that's one of the weird things of this game. I had always wondered, like, why didn't they just rename him then? Just rename him. But, it's because
the game was done.
The stuff was already done. They couldn't.
How hard, honestly, could it have been for them to just remake one graphic so they don't get sued?
That's a good question. You'd think it'd be a lot easier than confusing international players for the rest of time.
Well, that's kind of like the thing, though, when it comes to video games in the 90s, what could possibly ever be international about that?
That's true.
Esports didn't exist.
Very different time. Esports didn't exist. The internet was still just... I don't even think the internet was around yet. At all.
Not nearly as much as it is today.
So, I guess it sort of makes sense, but I still feel like... it still would have been easier to just, like, go to Capcom and say, hey, can we change this one name? Otherwise, it's not going to go well for us? Thanks.
But they didn't, and God bless.
They didn't, and now everything
It ruined
is confusing.
everything.
I have to remind myself to call them Dictator and stuff, because I just know that character is Bison. His name's Bison. But his name's not Bison. His name is Vega. But his name's not Vega, it's Bison. And fuck off!
It's a mess. What a mess.
Beautiful, beautiful mess. But that's really all I have to say about the game itself. Watching those grand finals, super fun, especially when it stopped being two projectile characters. And even later, when it again happened to be two projectile characters, that match was a lot more hype.
Yeah. No, I am... So that was such a cool thing to watch, and it's Street Fighter 2 is a competitive game kind of like without the flashy bullshit of modern fighting games, because modern fighting games are built as esport games. They're
built to be spectator sports.
Yes, and there's just something I don't want to say it's like more pure, because that's, it's kind of elitist, but it's more a thing of like it's just simple beauty in old fighting games. And that was so cool. This was not a game that was like made to look cool. It is cool because of the things that are happening on that screen.
And, like, that's part of the reason why combos accidentally got invented. The driving reason for what if we made the cool-looking moves easier to do was them people watching over somebody's shoulder will see that game and go, oh, that game's cool. I want to play it. And because the cool-looking moves are happening more often. That was a huge part of that decision, which I also find really funny and also really interesting.
Yeah.
Everything surrounding this game is fascinating.
This game was lightning in a bottle in so many ways. There's... I don't even know how to really put to words what this game did for the industry at large.
And of course, later on, fighting games would, of course, die off again. They would have sort of a dead period. And then I believe Street Fighter IV is credited with being the game that pumped new life into it and got people into fighting games again.
How many games can be responsible for an entire genre twice?
Yeah, pretty much. It's super, super interesting. And you know what else is interesting? The soundtrack of this game, written by my favorite video game composer, and I'm pretty sure, unfortunately, it is the only game on our entire list that is scored by this lady. Her name is Yoko Shimomura. Nowadays, she is most famous for doing the music of Kingdom Hearts. She also did Final Fantasy 15. She has been on all the Smash composing teams since Brawl.
Since they started doing them, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. Once they started having giant teams of composers, she's been on them every time. She is a fantastic composer, one of my favorites. She's even done movies, which I learned today, which is interesting. I thought she was just in games. She does all of the Mario RPGs, not Paper Mario, unfortunately, but like Super Mario RPG and all the Mario and Luigi games. She is responsible for all that music. And in Ultimate specifically, she did a remix of Vega's theme and Cass's theme from Breath of the Wild.
No, when you say Vega's theme, Claw's theme?
Claw's theme, yes.
Okay.
But the most important one that she did on Ultimate is Cass's theme from Breath of the Wild.
Which, yeah, that was an incredible mix.
One of my favorite songs in the whole game. But she did this soundtrack, and it was one of her first really big soundtracks, too. And she talks about it in this article about how, like, when she came on, she wasn't sure she was going to be able to do Street Fighter II. She was given two choices of what game she wanted to work on. She does not say what the other game was, but she just happened to pick Street Fighter II. And she was kind of worried because she didn't know if her personal style would fit well in a fighting game like this, especially because a lot of the stuff that Capcom put out at that point was really sort of more serious and more dark in tone. And she specialized more in like upbeat stuff. So basically what happened was the director would go up to her with a picture of the character and say, so this is the character, this is what their personality's like, this is where they are from. And she worked her hardest to try and infuse like where that character was from in the song.
Which I think worked out pretty well.
Same.
I think for the most part, these all of these songs really capture the character in some great way.
So obviously, if we're going to talk about the soundtrack, we got to bring up the first one that... Basically, when we talk about soundtracks on this show, usually I'm like, pick your top three, except for this one, because we have to talk about this one contractually if we're talking about this game. And for Street Fighter II, that's Guile's theme. Not just because it is a meme, but also because it's really good.
But also, yes, because it's a meme.
It's because it's a meme. This is the song everybody knows from Street Fighter II. If you've been on the internet for more than, 5 years, you know Guile's theme. Even if you don't know that it's Guile's theme, you know Guile's theme.
You may not know that you know, but you know.
It is the most notable song in all of Street Fighter II. Not to say I think it's the best. I have a different favorite, but... Let's go from bottom to top if you've got an order. I don't know if you do. I kind of do, but not really.
Have an order, no.
Well, give me your first one.
I was a fan of Zangief's theme.
I agree. Zangief's theme is super, like, it's before the show when you were listening to the soundtrack just to give yourself a refresher. You described it as jumping.
Yeah, no, it is jumping. That's what I would say. It starts out like with that cool bass beat going on there, and it's a fun time. That's a good song.
I do like it. It doesn't feel Russian to me, but I still think it feels really good.
You know.
It feels like wrestling, though, which fits Zangief. Zangief is a wrestler. Zangief is canonically, from what I am aware of, he is canonically a wrestler that doesn't realize wrestling is fake and is doing it for real.
Yes, from the Soviet Union, dating this game to a very specific time period in gaming history.
Does it. In history, in general.
Well, not nearly as narrow history, because, you know, how many video games were made during that time?
I guess Tetris. One of the most famous video games ever.
Don't come in here with your facts.
I'm particular to DJ's stage. It's just so bouncy, and it's a fun time, and it feels like DJ is a really sort of bouncy character. He's very upbeat and happy. He's a Jamaican boxer / dancer. I don't know a lot about DJ, but I do know that this fits him and his stage perfectly. His stage was the one with like the dancing people in the background.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, song's rad. I love it. What about your second one?
Well, I did have Guile's theme on my list, but we already talked about that one. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for Ken's theme.
I do really like Ken's theme. I think I like future renditions of Ken's theme a lot better, but this is still, I do agree, one of the best songs in the game.
Yeah.
Hot damn.
Like, in the Smash trailer, where, like, Ken and Incineroar were revealed, that is just, like, the music makes that, the music personally makes that trailer. And it's just such a good song.
We'll have better chances to talk about it when we get there, but the Street Fighter V rendition of Ken's theme is incredible. Like, really, really good.
It's just, it feels like it's like the main theme of the game in a way. Like, it's almost like a final boss theme, but it's not a final boss, it's Ken. It's just Ken. And I love it. I love it.
It's a very good theme. I like Vega / Claw's stage. I can't put my finger on exactly why, but it just feels...
It's got a very driving kind of motion and tone to it.
It's the only theme of one of the villains that feels like a villain theme. Because, like, Boxer's theme is kind of upbeat, and I'm not actually a big fan of Bison's theme at all, if I'm gonna be real. Like, this one feels like a villain... Vega's theme feels like a villain song. And I really like it. I especially like the remix that it got in Smash.
Oh, that remix is absolutely incredible.
That's the thing with a lot of these songs, is kind of like Zelda. I am partial to certain ones simply because, like, they're good in this game, but I've heard them in later games, and in those games they're incredible. Which, I guess, speaking of, here having heard like later versions first and thinking they're incredible, but also this version's incredible, Cammy's theme is my favorite song in the game.
Cammy's theme was so good, and you didn't let me put it on my list, but it's great.
Because it's my song! Cammy's theme is amazing. The first time I heard this theme was actually the Street Fighter 4 version. Street Fighter 5 version of the song is not very good, sadly. But Street Fighter 4's version is really, really, really good. And this version is also extremely good. I like the piano. I think the piano's the part that does it. The part where it gets really, really dramatic near the end is also, like, just so good. This soundtrack is so cool. And I love Yoko Shimomura. She's so talented.
Yeah, this is a triumph of game music, to be sure. She brought her A game.
There's a reason she is my favorite game composer, and this game further proved that I am correct in feeling the way I do. I'm glad she's still doing composing, because like this soundtrack was written in like 91 or 94.
Almost
it's
30 years ago.
2019.
Well, 25 years ago.
Yeah,
specifically. And
she's still doing stuff. She's doing something for one of the bigger franchises Square Enix has. Like, she has left Capcom since the Street Fighter days. She now works pretty much exclusively with Square Enix, though also does contract work with Nintendo, obviously. And she's just so good. She's so cool. One day I kind of hope to meet her, but I doubt that will ever happen. Ever. Some really cool shit would have to happen before I got to meet her. But yeah, that's the soundtrack of Street Fighter 2. So, do you got anything else to say in conclusion to this game?
I think this would be a game where we would do well to talk about, Ryu's implementation in Smash Brothers, because it is almost just a one-to-one port of how he plays in Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, he and Ken are both very, very much made to play like they are straight out of a Street Fighter game.
They even managed to incorporate like the 6-button structure by taking advantage of, not just the tilts and smash attacks, but also you can hold the button longer to do a stronger attack. It's the difference between light attacks and strong attacks.
Which is how some of the Game Boy games did it too, by the way, if I might point that out. The Game Boy version of Street Fighter 2, that's how it differentiated between heavy and light.
That's great to hear.
So, yeah, like Sakurai and Co, they put in the inputs. They, even in Ultimate specifically, they put in the always facing mechanic. When Ryu is fighting somebody one-on-one, he will always turn to face his opponent.
Which is sick. That is 10 out of 10.
It's really cool, and makes it so that I'll never be able to actually play Ryu in any meaningful way. But also, Ryu's still really fun to play in Smash. Ryu and Ken. Ken is a little more fun, but I like both. I
struggle with him a lot. I don't know. I'm not good enough with him to say that I really think he's super fun, but I appreciate him a lot. I think the way that he has been implemented is absolutely pitch perfect. It shows how much Sakurai loves Street Fighter in how perfectly Ryu is translated into Smash Brothers, and I don't think a character has ever been represented as perfectly as Ryu was.
I would agree with that. That sounds fair.
Even actually doing the real quarter circle inputs to do stronger versions of the attacks.
Yeah. It's really interesting the way they put in Street Fighter 2 while also keeping the idea of Smash is a game that can be played by anybody, including
you.
Including me.
But that's all I've got to say about it.
Yeah, I think I've said everything about it. So I guess we'll move on to our next game, shall we?
Oh shit, I forgot we do that.
Yeah, we sure do. It's a thing that we do. Our next game. We are leaving the arcade, and for the only time on this entire list, at least so far, heading to the Sega Genesis for the game representing fighter number 38, Sonic the Hedgehog. It's the 1992 Sega Genesis game, Sonic 2.
We probably should have done Sonic 3, but it's too late to change now.
Sure is, and we kind of realized that last week.
As last minute gets.
Yeah, but it's a little late now. Oh well, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Sonic 2 was my favorite growing up, mostly because it was the only one that I had access to on an actual Genesis. Sonic 3 is probably a better game, but that's not something that is soundly decided by the community. Among the big 3.5 classic Sonic games, it's a toss-up between Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And Sonic 1 is not in the running.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. Nobody thinks that one's the best. I hear Sonic 3 and Knuckles more often, but Sonic 2 is usually part of that conversation, yeah. I used to play Sonic games a lot at a friend's house, because he had a Genesis. I obviously did not. He also had I believe the Gems collection on GameCube. I also did not. I didn't have a GameCube. And that's how I know that, fair warning everybody, I don't like Sonic games. Not because I think they're bad, I just don't like them. They're not my thing. So this might be a hell of a one for me. I'm going to go into this expecting to I'm giving this a fair shot. Because I really like aspects of Sonic games. I think Sonic games look really nice. Obviously, the one constant that Sonic even now keeps is the soundtrack, which I'm super looking forward to. Chemical Plant Zone used to be one of my favorite video game songs just in general.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to those aspects, but not so much looking forward to playing Sonic 2.
I like it. I'm going to have a good time. I'm probably not going to like the final boss, actually. The final boss is going to be horseshit, and I'm probably not going to have save states.
I've never seen the final boss.
Final boss
I've
is horseshit.
never made it past whatever zone is after Chemical Plant. Ever.
I think that's... it's in a jungle or something. I forget.
I don't remember. But I'll have save states, so hopefully that will help.
What if we just did Sonic 3 instead, but did it right now anyway?
I don't think...
Because we have to do it right now.
We're already stuck. We've already said the name of the game. But I am going to give this game a fair shot.
What if we play Sonic 2 and Sonic 3?
What if I instead died and nobody ever heard from me again?
It's probably for the best that we chose the shorter game, because I'm gonna get real sick of you hating on one of my favorite games.
Look, let me put it this way. I didn't really enjoy Sonic Mania. That is the central, Sonic games just aren't your thing revelation that's the biggest one I could possibly give you. I don't hate them. I don't think they are bad. There's a couple of design things in Sonic in general that I disagree with, which I'll bring up in detail during the episode. Look forward to it. But I don't think Sonic games are bad. They're just not my cup of tea. Is the thing.
Well, whatever. I'm not going into... I don't think you're going to be mean-spirited about it or, not give it a fair shot or whatever. But I'm also I like this game. This game's good.
I mean, that's going to be a good dynamic to have. It'll be good to have one that is kind of lukewarm on it and one that very much likes the game. And I mean, obviously the game is good. It wouldn't have a giant fan base if it wasn't good. The only reason Sonic has kept its fan base through the veritable shit show that has been its franchise for like 2 decades now is because like its original games were really good and people enjoyed them. And every once in a while they put out another good game. But I don't see any other reason why the Sonic franchise would still have a lot of fans. If I'm being honest.
If you want to hear a good retrospective on Sonic, you can watch a video series by The Geek Critique. He's a guy on YouTube that I like. He's done like all the Sonic games, and he has a lot of good points on the dichotomy of modern Sonic fans versus classic Sonic fans, and how like the games that we grow up with are the ones that we prefer. And there is going to be there is a subset of Sonic fans on the internet that are coming of internet age now who grew up on Sonic Unleashed, and they're going to start defending that game the same way I defend Sonic Adventure 2.
Oh boy. I mean, that sounds like the cycle starting anew. But I don't really have anything else to say about Sonic before playing it. I am, to be honest, despite saying, like, I'm not a fan of Sonic, I am kind of looking forward to giving it a shot. I've never actually beaten a classic-style Sonic game. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that for once in my damn life. At the very least. But there is one other important thing that we should bring up.
Bit of housekeeping.
And we'll bring it up next episode, too, because it's also going to play then. The reason that we have to do the Sonic game now and cannot push it forward is because we will actually be recording an episode live.
Yeah, we have committed to a hard schedule, and that schedule cannot change because you sure don't want to record Rondo of Blood's episode live.
God, no. So, obviously, Sonic 2 is a short game. We will both hopefully be able to knock it out in one session, 2 at the most. And that's like, if things go really wrong for one of us, I feel like. And after that, we have Kirby's Adventure, which that episode will be recorded live at the Nintendo World Report charity telethon for Child's Play charity.
This is the 9th annual NWR charity live stream. I have been, of course, I am a member of Nintendo World Report, a member of their staff. But before I was a member of staff, when I was just a fan of the site, I have been there for every single one of these telethons, and every single one is an incredible time. They are a 12-hour affair, and it is the first 3 hours are free, and then the rest get unlocked as more money is raised for the charity. We are at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on January 26th. That is in the $2,000 block, so our segment will be unlocked if the charity raises $2,000. As of this very moment, 3 weeks before the stream goes live, we are at $160, and that number is going to go up. The all-time record is $7,243. Child's Play is a great charity. NWR, of course, I'm a little biased, but NWR is a great site. I strongly recommend you guys head over to NintendoWorldReport.com. It's going to be one of the biggest links on the front page. Take a look at that. Toss a couple bucks towards the charity. 100% of the donations go to Child's Play. The NWR cannot even see that money. We do not touch it.
For anybody that does not know what Child's Play does, they are a fantastic charity. They provide video games and toys and the such to hospitals for children that are stuck in the hospital, just to give them a little bit of a distraction for when their life probably isn't going all that great. And as people that play video games, we know how important that can be.
It's a wonderful charity. It's going to be a wonderful stream. It starts at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on January 26th. Smashterpieces is going to be at 6 p.m. following Jeopardy. There's a Jeopardy right before us. And some other great stuff that's going to be going on that day. We've got production horror stories to tell in the dark. I believe that's from Seren McNulty, who is a game developer herself. I think that's Seren's segment. Don't quote me on that when I'm inevitably wrong. She has two segments, and I don't remember which ones are which. There's Crossover Chaos, which is going to be an insane segment about being given 2 games and on the spot making up a crossover between them. At 10 p.m., they're just going to be talking about dinosaurs. That's a tradition for the telethon. Every year, we just talk about dinosaurs for an hour. Good. And then, way at the end of the night, at 1 a.m., is the bonus J&J Late Night Nightmare with James Jones and John Lindemann, two of the hosts of the podcast Radio Free Nintendo. They're going to be talking about the business.
So basically, the schedule is going to be Sonic episode will be coming out in the next week and a half or so at the latest. And then the Kirby episode will be recorded live. Want to tell them that time once again?
For the whole telethon is at 11:30 a.m. We are at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on January 26th.
So tune into the whole thing, but mostly, especially, tune into our thing. But tune into the whole thing, too. And also, throw them some money if you can. It's for a good cause.
Yes, and obviously, of course, we are going to be uploading a recording to the podcast feed as normal.
Yeah, the episode will come out as a regular episode, but if you want to hear it before anybody else, and if we do this again, one idea that I think I have is I have a list of games in the other category for Smash that I think we could, like, pick one or have a poll or something and just do it as a special. But that is future talk.
We'll figure it out. But you will also be able... There will be a chat along with the stream. So if you ever wanted to yell at us in real time, instead of just on Twitter after the episode comes out, you can come live, watch it, NintendoWorldReport.com.
You can tell me why I'm wrong about Kirby. I don't know how I'll be wrong about Kirby, but there'll be something.
I'll probably be wrong about Kirby.
We'll both figure out something to be wrong about Kirby.
Or you can just show up and tell Doba to his face that he's wrong about Sonic.
That also could be the case. Anyways, you can find us on Twitter at Smashterpieces. You can find us on Facebook at Smashterpieces. You can find us on YouTube as Smashterpieces, which, again, all of the VODs and the episodes go up on that YouTube channel, including the VOD of us watching the Street Fighter Top 8, which I think was one of the more fun streams either of us have done for this project.
If you don't watch that VOD, watch that Top 8.
Definitely. You can find me at twitch.tv/DetectiveDobaga. You can find Matt at twitch.tv/GrimaceTheMenace. And you can find the entire show at anondino.squarespace.com. That is anon as in anonymous, dino.squarespace.com. There you can find not only every single episode of the show, but also links to our Twitch channels and a link to the full list of games that we'll be playing for this project.
And you can send us an email at smashterpieces@gmail.com. We don't own that. We don't own that email address. That's not us.
Actually, it's smashterpiecespod.gmail.com.
So you can send us an email at smashterpieces@gmail.com, and it won't go to us. It'll go to someone.
It sure will. Tell them they're wrong about Kirby. With that, thank you for listening. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
And we will see you next time for our episode on Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah.